So this lecture, feedback in the body, this is the mechanism by which the body is able to control itself. So feedback is an important mechanism for the body to maintain itself. But more specific, body to maintain homeostasis. Homeostasis. Let me talk about that word for just a moment. Homeostasis is the ability to maintain stable internal conditions.
You forgot the "tain" on the first name.
Did I really?
Yeah. For the body to main.
Holy smokes. Ah. There we go. Good as new. All right. Yeah, I say things that I don't necessarily write, and vice versa. All right, so can you give me an example of a stable internal condition? What do we have to maintain?
Temperature.
Oh, that's a perfect example. Not in all living things, but for us, we need to maintain a toasty 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit inside.
Is that like specific? Could be 97.6.
It can't drop too far down without us dropping into hypothermia, and sometimes like temperature. If you take temperature like by mouth, the reading may come up a little less because, well, I mean, especially if you like just ate popsicles or something. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of variance where that's concerned, but your body internally should be maintaining pretty close to that. You have a few degrees of variance. If you've ever had a fever, your body, and this is an interesting little detail, no infection can actually cause a fever. Okay? You cause a fever. Your body raises its own temperature in order to combat that, because it's raising the temperature to 102 or 103 or whatever in an attempt to cook whatever it is that's trying to infect you, and on a large scale cause their slaughter, because they're way smaller than we are. Their cells are smaller and they can't handle it as much. The interesting thing about that is they're trying to get a certain chemical inside of those bacterial cells to unfold and no longer work. Guess what that chemical is? Proteins. Yep. Comes back to proteins. Maintaining, how about this? 7.4 as the pH of blood. There's a lot of different examples. It doesn't necessarily have to be a number that we're trying to maintain, but the body is working to try to get back to these, to try to get constantly back to a state of normal. That's what homeostasis is. There are two types of feedback to maintain. All right, two types of feedback are they are negative feedback, and then what? Positive feedback. This one's a loop. I'll talk about why in just a little bit. Negative feedback. All right. I want you to draw an arrow up and an arrow down. Then I want you to draw an arrow down and an arrow up. Okay? I want you to think of it that way. Whereas this is the stimulus and our response. Okay? The same thing. Our bodies work to counteract stimulus. Little star there, sort of. Most common. By far, this is the most common. Negative feedback is the main mechanism our body uses to keep us going, and the temperature example is perfect. Okay? Our temp starts to rise. And that is the stimulus. You are standing outside in the summertime under the baking sun, waiting in line for a roller coaster at Six Flags, okay? And there's really not any shade on this particular line you're waiting in, and you've got about another hour to go, and the only soda machine is like, it's about half an hour ahead in your wait, and it's like $5 for a soda in that machine anyway, so you're just sweltering. What's your body going to do to respond to this rise in temperature? You're going to sweat, which is why you're thirsty. We sweat. Okay? The sweat on our body will evaporate. And the process of evaporation, it will draw away that heat from our body. So our response of our body is to counteract the thing that's occurring. Okay? That is negative feedback. Almost all of the body's responses are to counteract or to undo something that's happening to it. That's why it's negative, because our response is the opposite of what's being done to us. There are or opposite of what the stimulus is. Very few examples of positive feedback. So draw an arrow up, and guess what's going to be next to it? Yeah, up. Okay, and down and down. This is our body's work to amplify a stimulus, increasing it to an end. Okay? Our goal in negative is to decrease whatever stimulus. Goal in positive is to work with it or amplify it to an end. There are only 2 examples I've ever read in a textbook, and there may only be 2 examples that exist at all anywhere in the human body. Anybody know what one might be?
When you get stung by a bee and your skin starts to swell up from the venom, the skin around it will also swell to stop the venom from spreading.
And yeah, that could definitely work, because you're trying to counteract, but it ends up kind of amplifying. That's to an end too. That can be really, really bad. The example this textbook gives here is the example of blood clotting. Okay. All right. Break in blood vessel wall. Damaged cell releases chemicals. Clotting begins. Now here's the loop. You ready? Additional chemicals are released, causing clotting to accelerate. Clotting causes additional chemicals to be released, which causes to accelerate even more and more and more and more until the end of what? Well, hopefully not. No, we're trying to prevent that.
Until you're not bleeding.
Yeah, so you're no longer bleeding out of your body or out of the blood vessels. Yeah, so it works to amplify until it reaches an eventual end. Okay, works to amplify until it gets to some sort of thing. The other one was childbirth. In childbirth, there is a chemical released called oxytocin. Oxytocin causes contractions of the uterus. Well, the pressure of the baby's head up against the cervix and the squeezing against that tells the brain to release more oxytocin. Okay, so watch this. You have oxytocin causing the uterus to contract, which pushes the baby up against the cervix, which causes stretching of the cervix, which causes more oxytocin to be released, and this gets stronger and contractions get stronger and stronger and stronger until what happens? A baby's born. Yeah. So that was the eventual end thereof. There's only a couple of examples, like total, of positive feedback that exists in the body. But now here's a question: have you guys ever heard of feedback in a microphone? Okay. Here's how that works. Okay, here's a microphone on a stand there, and some dingus puts the monitor like right here, right in front of it. Like, we need to turn the volume up here. Okay. All right. So watch what happens. Sound comes out, gets captured by the microphone. That goes into the amplifier, and then out of the speaker. Amplifier turns it up, and it comes out louder, and it goes into the microphone, and it gets louder and louder and louder and louder until it goes. That's for you viewers at home that fell asleep. Okay. Until it keeps on going. So what would that be? Would that be negative or positive feedback? That'd be positive feedback because it is a loop. Yeah, and because it's increasing. Sorry about that. Sorry about that to those of you in this classroom who also fell asleep. So, which one is most common? Negative. But positive does exist. These are all ways that the body tries to maintain what? Homeostasis. Good job.